The following is a presentation of the MyTalk Podcast Network.
Episode 599 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I'm Jason Bryant, and, well, you kind of know what's going on, right? Well, one of the things I was looking to do for those of you that were planning on coming to Minneapolis, there was going to be 40,000 of you, 40,000 of my best wrestling friends coming to this tournament, the Division I championships, which are now canceled, along with the Division II to Division III. The clubs actually went on. The junior colleges in NAIA were done. The NAIA women were also canceled. But those of you that were coming to Minneapolis, I had two special shows planned for you, and I'm still going to release them. The first one is today, where I talk with MyTalk 107.1's Stephanie Hansen. She's a food blogger. She's also a radio host. She does a lot of cool things here, focusing on the Minnesota food scene as well as the Minnesota entrepreneur scene. So I had a chance to sit down with Stephanie in late February to really prepare the fans coming in on the food scene here and the things they needed to check out. I also sat down prior to leaving for the Division III championships a couple days ago, and this is before we had everything shut down and the plans were still, people were going to come. We had, this is even before they stopped allowing the fans into that. And we were talking about that show, which is going to be episode 600, is going to talk about the craft beer scene. So long story short, if you're going to come to Minneapolis in the future, if you're going to come to the Twin Cities, let this be your food guide. I'm not saying go out and do this tonight. When you hear this is released on March the 14th, Pi Day. Not saying do it right now, because there's certain things you might want to do to probably stop the spread of this thing. And, I would encourage that. Your opinions may be different. But if you come here in the future, this is the food stuff, and this is the woman you need to listen to. So, without further ado, I give you my food journey with Stephanie Hansen here on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, originally planned for all of you coming in to the Twin Cities. But if you ever come here again, I highly recommend it, because this is a great place to live. It's a great place to eat. It's a great place to party. It's a great place for sports. It's a great place for beer. It's a great place for the outdoors. And here's just a little bit of that food journey on episode 599 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Hope to see you soon. But, if it's July on your way to Fargo, hey, these places are probably still going to be open. So I'd like to thank Stephanie for her time. And I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time for Short Time.
So last night I went to Shamrock's and had a Paul Molitor burger.
What? Okay, see, this might even be a cold open for all we know here. What is a Paul Molitor burger?
It is a Juicy Lucy. So it is a 2 patties that is formed around a pile of pepper jack cheese, and then they griddle it so the cheese inside becomes molten, and then they serve it on a bun, and then I always get a side of jalapeno peppers, and it's delicious. So that was my dinner last night.
And where is Shamrock's?
Shamrock's is in St. Paul on West 7th, and the funny thing about Shamrock's is they also own the Nook. So when you talk about Juicy Lucy's in town, people talk about Matt's, people talk about the 5-8. Well, in St. Paul, the original Juicy Lucy was at the Nook. And the Nook is a great spot. There's a Ranham bowling in the basement. You can get cans of Pabst down there. It's super fun. But if it's too crowded or there's a line, like Shamrock's is 3 times as big. So it's the secret St. Paul secret to get your Juicy Lucy.
That's good, because I was going to bring up what a Juicy Lucy is, and I'm just going to go with this cold open today on Short Time, talking with Stephanie Hansen, the host of numerous podcasts here in the Twin Cities, mostly notable, at least for me, on 107.1, MyTalk 107.1, for Weekly Dish, a show where you and your co-host Stephanie Marsh, Stephanie's, there's a little double meaning there with the apostrophes.
Sure.
You know food, you know beverage, you know the scene, you're a native of the Twin Cities. The reason to have you on is to talk about all those people that are going to come in here March 18th through 21st at the NCAA Wrestling Championships. They're not going to know a whole lot about Twin Cities culture, Twin Cities food, and basically what's great about this area. So we're going to focus on the food and dining experience today on both Minneapolis and St. Paul. You got a great spot in St. Paul. I love this. You're not that far from Cafe Latte, which was one of my favorite spots.
I'm not.
I'm going to surprise my wife with German chocolate cake on the way home, but
that's so nice.
Thankfully this isn't live, so she's going to figure that out after the fact. But Stephanie, again, a little bit about yourself. You work in radio, but you've been a influencer. You've been working in social media marketing. You've been all sorts of places and doing things. And what is the one thing that you found about the Twin Cities that makes it home for you?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I thought about moving away like long ago, and I did move away for a little bit, but I came back. There's something very provincial, and I say that in a nice way because that can have two meanings. It feels like there's a real community here. People are hard to get to know because we're sort of standoffish, not because we don't want to be friends with you, but we're just Nordic and don't know how. So once you get past that part, this community is just full of creative people. It's full of makers. It's full of scientists. It's full of great medical minds. I love living here. I love that it gets cold in the winter and that we get 4 seasons. So you get a nice fall. I have a cabin, so I love the 10,000 lakes. I just can't imagine being very far from a lake. I lived in the East Coast for a while, and I lived literally right on the Chesapeake Bay, but you couldn't swim in it. So I was like, this just feels so sad that I'm right here, but I can't actually get in the water. So I think it's a little better now, but I just have always loved living in the Twin Cities, and I knew very quickly that this would be the place that I would settle.
Yeah, I'm from southeastern Virginia, so I was in the swimmable portion of the Chesapeake Bay where I grew up. My hometown juts right out into it, so that brings my affinity for seafood, which I'll actually bring up here on a place we've eaten, because I usually kind of have a rule: I don't eat seafood west of Richmond, Virginia. So Thankfully we have good lake fish and walleye up here, but that's more in jest than it is in actual practice. But Stephanie, one thing that I am really interested in, and being a transplant, I've called this place home for 10 years. I married a Minnesota girl, so I left and then came back. Is we've got the big 4 sports. You can go 6 if you're going to include, the WNBA champion Minnesota Lynx and the Minnesota United soccer teams. I'm not really going to say I'm a fan of all 6 major sports, but again, we say we've got the big 4. We've got a Big 10 team. We've got, from a wrestling standpoint, you have Augsburg University and St. Cloud State, which have won national championships in recent memory. You've got a great music scene with First Ave, and then everything that comes into Excel and the Target Center.
And now the Fillmore too.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I haven't been there yet. And then
pretty great.
And then places like the Turf Club, which I saw Cody Cannon and The Departed, which some people may know as part of Cross Canadian Ragweed. You've got music. You've got the great beer scene. You've got the camping scene. You can drive 1 hour in every direction and be outdoors away from people. So what I love about this place is I have all those things where I didn't have it where I grew up in Virginia, lived in Pennsylvania, lived in Colorado. While Colorado Springs may be the most beautiful place I've ever lived, Minnesota in the Twin Cities here is the best place I've ever lived for all of those things. Part of that too is my discovery of food culture, and not necessarily being a foodie, but somebody who now appreciates something better than, oh, cool, it's boneless night at B-Dubs.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, or it's all you can eat, insert, waistline expanding food here. So from a food perspective, from an outsider standpoint, what is the best thing people should know when coming into the Twin Cities about the food scene here?
It's interesting because for many, many years, we've been considered sort of flyover country. But I think that the Super Bowl kind of launched us into a more national way. And we had been doing lots of cool things before that, but I think Super Bowl and that whole Bold North experience gave us the opportunity to introduce it to both people on the East and the West coasts. The Minneapolis food scene here is incredible. And it's always been incredible because we've always had farm and we've always had the General Mills in our backyard. So we've been very ingredient driven. But I think as we've moved forward, people are giving our chefs and our people here more recognition. I don't think that people knew what the cuisine of the North was. And we're spending a lot more time talking about heritage grains and the things that really made us as a food community grow up, and our access to cattle and our access to pork and our access to farming goods. I mean, it's all right here. We're like the Midwest. We're the breadbasket. We have everything.
And that's one thing. The wrestling culture of this country is also been looked at as, there's pockets of Pennsylvania and Ohio, but again, Iowa, Oklahoma, the Midwest flyover country, for example, is what people like to call it. And wrestling fans really hate that because our biggest tournaments have drawn in the Midwest. I mean, things in Iowa leads the nation in attendance for college wrestling. They've drawn over 10,000 for every home duel this year. So we look at all those things and we're a blue collar crowd. So we are farmers. We are hard workers.
Yeah.
We are a blue collar type of crowd. So those type of things that we help raise go into the food culture. And I think some of it, maybe even from my own personal experience, is the fact that we've got the abundance of television where being a celebrity chef and all these cooking shows, like, I mean, how many people don't stop on Chopped and it freezes you for a little bit?
Yeah.
Or, you know, I subscribe to seasons of Top Chef and things of that nature. So the celebrity scene, the television, access to being a foodie is also playing a role in that.
It's funny because our radio show Weekly Dish coincided. Food Network had just launched when we decided to start doing a radio show about food. And we've had that show 13 years now on MyTalk 107.1 on Saturdays from 9 to 11. And you can podcast it as well. And it really talks all about the Twin Cities food scene, but also just food in general. You know, we talk about larger topics and we're pretty funny. But all of this food people coming into your living room really made it feel like you could make some of these things and that it wasn't so challenging to cook because there's a lot of people that don't know how to cook. But if you get exposure to it and you start to demystify some of the ingredients, and it's really, you know, you learn about 10 basic skills and you can cook just about anything. What's interesting about this podcast is my uncle was a D1 wrestler from Wisconsin. And his name
I was going to ask what your connection to wrestling was if you had one. So
it's the only connection I have. Well, two things. He was, I can't remember what college he went to, but Paul Nelson was his name. And he has become a big foodie. And we have gone on lots of foodie adventures together. We've been to Croatia together. We've been to Italy together. And we've been to Mexico together, and we just have eaten all over the world together. And he was a wrestler. Then he was a wrestling coach. And he talks a lot about food and wrestling and just food as fuel and some of the ways that they have modified diets over the course of time in the wrestling culture. Mm-hmm. So we've just talked a lot about food. So my only connection to wrestling is that. And then the second story is I used to watch the WWE, which I know is not the same as wrestling, but my stepmom got kicked out of the Target Center at a Hulk Hogan match, WrestleMania, I think it was, for throwing M&Ms.
And who was and your uncle? And
my stepmom was the one who was kicked out. And my uncle was Paul Nelson.
Okay. So there you go. So, and you said he wrestled at Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I'll have to look that one up because
I think it was Wisconsin. He was a D1. He's from Wisconsin, D1. It might have been, no, it was Chicago. There he wrestled in Chicago.
Okay, because it could have been, there's a couple options there.
Yeah.
It could be Northwestern, it could be University of Chicago, could be a couple things there. They're D3. But anyway, so you're not completely foreign to the world of wrestling, which is
a little foreign, but not 100%.
Well, because we're not talking about the wrestlers making weight on this show. We're talking about the fans, the people that are going to be able to drink their face off and eat their face off here. And part of that, you're talking about the being about food and knowing how to cook. Part of that too is drifted into people are now going, fine dining no longer seems to be an exclusive activity. You don't have to make six figures to just simply enjoy. Granted, people that are blue collar, you can afford that date night here and there where you're going to spend probably, a little bit more than you'd like to spend on a meal. But the opportunity now, the access, like, okay, farm to table actually means something, where, grass fed, they're the different types of ingredients. Like you said, we're ingredients driven here. Makes for a better dining experience because you actually now know how food is supposed to taste.
And I think, date night used to mean like you would get a babysitter and you would go out and you would spend, $100 on a fancy meal. Well, date night now can be as simple as going to Sociable Cider Works, having a glass of their delicious homemade cider, and then eating from Yia Vang's food truck that's right there, Union Kitchen, and getting a rice bowl. And that rice bowl is going to probably be the best rice bowl you've ever had because he's cooking Hmong food, which most people don't know about, but it's Asian food and it's super delicious and it's kind of street food. So you're all in on that is going to be about $40, maybe $50 if you get a couple of sides. So date night can mean lots of things now. It doesn't have to be that you're going to Spoon and Stable and, spending a couple $100 on a meal.
Yeah, and I was going to save this for later, but since we're already talking about date night, your co-host writes for Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine.
Yes, she's the food editor.
A story I read via my email was about Baldemar, which is a steakhouse that just opened up in Roseville, which is one of the suburbs. So from downtown, you can probably hop in an Uber and be there 15, 20 minutes, depending on traffic.
Yeah, it's quick. There's a couple things up in Roseville that are worth checking out. Randy Stanley owns Baldemar, and he also owns a steakhouse called Six Smith that's in Wayzata, which is west of downtown. And both steakhouses are similar in that they really do a fabulous job with meat, but also with fish, also with chicken. It's supper club dining, but it's a little bit elevated. So you're going to just get a lovely piece of meat, but you're going to be able to have access to sauces or rubs or different things that'll make that meat a little bit, maybe you have it crab encrusted, maybe you have a béarnaise sauce that would be on the side. But the rooms feel really beautiful. They're kind of dark and a little woodsy, but not stuffy. It's just a great spot. They have a great bar there too with lots of TVs. So if you're someone that likes to keep up on your sports scores, you can go to Baldemar, you can sit at the bar and have a martini and have probably the best filet and hash browns that you would have.
Oh, and I had my wife and I split the T-bone and she got the scallops. And again, that goes to my seafood aversion of anything west of Richmond, Virginia. Growing up where they get the scallops and the crab right off the boat, you could literally eat it within an hour. So, out here, you're not really.
It is flown. Yeah. It is flown in, but thank God for modern transportation. I mean, we can get scallops that were farmed yesterday.
But the point I'm saying about Baldemar is we went there, we sat down, and it was one of the most delicious experiences because one, it said, the dress code is what it is, but it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't stuffy. It was approachable. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend getting a reservation off Open Table or something like that. That's what we did. But you sit down and the beer selection to me was a good option because you had a very, very diverse group of Minnesota beers and of course your old regulars. But again, it was an approachable upper level steakhouse.
Here's what I would
really
say.
Nice.
There is nowhere in the Twin Cities right now, nowhere that you can go that you can't wear a pair of jeans. Okay. But you have to, if you're going to wear jeans, which is fine. Maybe you wear a little nicer pair of sneakers, or maybe you wear a nicer loafer and you might have a pressed shirt, or you might have a blazer, but there's really nowhere in this entire town that you can't go with a pair of jeans, to be perfectly honest. Even our most high-end fine restaurants, you can go in with a pair of jeans. If you've got the rest of the, accoutrements, if you're looking sloppy and crappy, well, stick to some of the food trucks and some of the breweries. But don't be deterred by dress. There's really very little that you can't do in this town in jeans.
Yeah, and I want to make sure, too, that this is not focusing on the top level of our fan that comes in, because some people come in and they're here for the party. They're here for bar food. They're here for pub food. We're going to talk about that in a second. But they're also here for the beer experience. But there are people that come in, they rent the skybox. Or they go, we're going to have one good meal. We're going to go out. We're going to find this place. This is our team meal. I know that, like the William and Mary alumni, I think we ate at Ruth's Chris last year.
Yep.
Out in Pittsburgh. Or some, it was one of those. It might have been St. Louis. I can't remember which were Cleveland. Whatever these tournaments, but they find experiences for their groups, their alumni groups and stuff. So those are options. Now, when it comes to the blue collar individual, the person that's like, oh, you know what, $20, $25 a meal plate might be about the extent of, because they know it's going to cost money here.
Yeah. So
in looking at, let's focus first around US Bank Stadium, that downtown area, which has exploded with its food. What are some of your favorite places? If you're, say, coming out of a Vikings game, you can pick, but one place that that, okay, there's going to be 40,000 people here watching wrestling. They've got options. What are some of the ones that you would suggest right off the bat?
Near US Bank Stadium, in stadium proper, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of challenging. Mm-hmm. There is not a lot down there. There's becoming more, but Zenbox Izakaya is a ramen place on Washington Avenue, and it's owned by a local couple that came here from Japan, and they have the best ramen. And ramen's pretty inexpensive. Ramen is a bowl of soup, basically, like this super flavorful broth, and then it'll have rice noodles, it'll have half an egg in there, it'll have meat usually, maybe it's meatballs, maybe it's sliced beef, and then there'll be greens that you put in there too, like cilantro or bean sprouts, and then you can amp it up with some sriracha, you can put soy sauce in there. That's a delicious meal that's down there. Also, I would say if you're looking for just somewhere where you can sit at a bar and have a great burger, East Side is Jamie Malone. She's one of our James Beard award-winning chefs, but she runs a kitchen that is down there, and they do a great happy hour. They have an awesome burger. You can sit at that bar. Also, Lion's Tap is down there and has a great burger that's been around town for a long time and is kind of more pub fare. Mm-hmm. If you're getting a little further away from the stadium, I love to go to the North Loop.
Which I think that's one place that's probably going to be kind of the central hub, because when people say the stadium, you're talking immediate proper. I mean, within a mile, there's plenty. I mean, and plus with walking in the Skyways, you really don't have to go outside.
Yes. You don't have to go outside. If you get down to the North Loop, there is some great food experiences down there. There is Red Cow, which is very accessible for everyone. They have some of the most amazing burgers there. They have a double barrel burger that's a double burger, and it's got an onion ring on it and some barbecue sauce. They've also got fish and chips, which are super spectacular, and they have a huge wing game there. And if you're like with someone who maybe doesn't eat meat, they've got a plant-based burger that's made out of that Impossible meat that is so great you wouldn't even know it's not a burger, and I mean that 100%.
I don't think many wrestling fans are going to admit to being the impossible, but I'll be honest.
A lot of the
I've had one. It's not terrible. I mean, I'm a meat guy, but
yeah, they have cauliflower wings too. So you can have your big meaty wings there. They've got some great dry rubbed wings, or you can get cauliflower wings. Red Cow is it's always spectacular, and they have a giant beer selection. So they're going to have all your Minnesota beers, but they're also going to have beers from the East and West Coast, and they'll have exclusive beers that other people don't have. They have relationships where they bring in, craft brewers from all around the country. So Red Cow would be a great one. And then, depending on what you're looking for, there is dessert places. There's the Hewing Hotel is a beautiful hotel, and I like to encourage people to just go there and have a drink. I wouldn't hang around to eat, but it's one of the great spots to drink. And then the Monte Carlo has been there forever, and their dry rubbed wings are the best wings in town, hands down. You get a wing, you get served it with fries. Those dry rubbed wings will change your life. They're just incredible. Both Stephanie and I think those are the best wings in town. See,
because my buddy Charlie and I, he's one of our local uniformed constabulatory out in St. Paul. Him and I we were searching for wing spots. We've had D-Spot out in Oakdale.
D-Spot's great.
Phenomenal. So if you're out in that part of the area and you want some good wings, I would recommend also D-Spot too. But
there's a whole list of wings on stephaniesdish.com. So I just did a wing segment, and I highlighted the 10 best wings in the Twin Cities.
What's your favorite at D-Spot?
I like the really hot wings there. So I would go with the sriracha. I might go with the teriyaki if I was doing sweet and sour. There's also Serums in Anoka, which is up that way. Mm-hmm. And they have great wings too. I generally like dry rubbed wings, but if I'm going to have a wet wing, I want it to be cooked. Mm-hmm. Cooked. Like, I don't want that flabby skin. Like, I have real feelings about it. So if you have not cooked the wing properly and then you put sauce on it and it's just like that flabby, no thank you.
Yeah. Back to the U.S. Bank Stadium area. So, of course, that's not all there is there, but there's plenty of bars and restaurants that have.
There's Daylock Blue Ring. That's right there.
There's hundreds of them down there, but again, like 508 or the Loon, one of the classic bars downtown.
The Loon is a awesome spot if you're going to go there for chili. There is also Mackenzie's Pub, which has a great whiskey selection, and it's a real pub. Like, it's long and it's narrow, and you're going to rub elbows with your neighbors, but that's a super fun spot. Also on both East and West Hennepin, they have two restaurants on the same street, is Eli's. And Eli's is a local owned place, and it's like, kind of like a dive bar on the West End, and on the East End, it's a little bit nicer. And right across the street, they also own Beast Barbecue. So that's a good spot if you want to have like a walleye po' boy. Their walleye po' boy is amazing. They also have great wings, really fun drinks, and then you can hit up barbecue at Beast. The best barbecue in town, though, hands down, is the food truck that's at Able Brewing. Okay, it's in the parking lot. It's called Animales. And John Wiffley is the chef there, and he is smoking ribs and sides of pork. If you happen to catch him on an awesome day, you can get the McJonimal, which is just like a Big Mac, but it's actually a good Big Mac. His barbecue there is fantastic. He's got big, juicy, meaty sausages. Just so good.
Because I've been on, again, being from the South, I've been on the crusade for good barbecue, and I think they just opened up an Old Southern in Arden Hills. Lexington has a Blue Collar Barbecue, which is a pretty good spot, which we hit up last week. So now that I mean, and I enjoy Able Brewing's stuff. I mean, they've got that Black Wolf Stout, which is probably one of my favorite stouts in the area. So Able Brewing, haven't been down there yet, but hey, folks,
Animales is like top notch, and you'll know right away, like this is the real deal.
And in case you're wondering, I am going to get into the beer discussion quite heavily with Drew and Schmitty from the Minnesota Beer Cast on Twin Cities News Talk 1130. It's funny, we got two different radio stations that we're pairing with here. We're talking food today. We'll talk beer on the next episode. But when you're looking at people that are staying maybe in the outskirts, they may take the light rail. I know the Media Hotel is in downtown St. Paul, the Intercontinental in St. Paul, so it's about 9 miles away from the venue. So
it's down. You're so close. If you're at the Intercontinental Hotel in St. Paul, you're so close to so many things.
Such as?
Well, St. Paul Grill, if you want to do the fancy big boy thing and you want to have a fancy martini and a whiskey, and they have the best hash browns in town and also amazing wild rice soup, which sounds
Minnesota
weird,
staple.
but it is a Minnesota staple, and their wild rice soup is the best wild rice soup in town, I think. So you're going to hit up the St. Paul Grill. Then you can also go down the road. And if we just walk down 7th Street, which is near the hotel, you could start with Cosetta's, and that's going to be a whole Italian grocery, a pasticceria that has amazing desserts and macaroons and Italian pastries. They're also going to have on the top level, Louise is a full service restaurant with your red sauces, your cippinos, your lasagna, and your pizzas are going to be down below at the grab and go. And you just keep walking down the street. Pajarito, which is further down on West 7th, is really delicious, kind of elevated Mexican. So they're going to have tacos, but they're going to be the kind of tacos that are on a corn tortilla with a little bit of cilantro.
You're not unwrapping them
some
in your
pulled
car.
Pork. Yeah, exactly. There's also a great brewery down there, Bad Weather Brewing, which has a beer that's called Miraculum that, it's called Hopromancer.
Yeah, Hopromancer, and Prize
is Miraculum. Hopromancer is my favorite IPA there. You'll keep walking down that street. There's DeGidio's. DeGidio's is old school St. Paul, and they are known for their delicious spaghetti and meatballs. And you just get a massive plate of spaghetti and meatballs. It's a family-owned place. Really nice, really fun. I could just keep going.
Well, and this thing, because we're explaining two different locales, because again, the Media Hotels in St. Paul, people are going to be staying in St. Paul, taking the light rail over across the Twin Cities. And it is a real dynamic area that we live in, because downtown St. Paul at night and downtown Minneapolis at night are completely different experiences.
They are. St. Paul is cozier. It's more quiet. Up on Grand Avenue is kind of where a lot of action happens in St. Paul, also in Lower Town. St. Dinette, if you like a crinkle cut fry and a burger, their burger, I think, is award winning that you can get at the bar there. It tastes just like a McDonald's burger, but it's the good beef. It's the good experience. It's the crinkle cut fry. Excuse me. That's a locally owned spot too. If you head over to in Lower Town still, Handsome Hog is going to be one of the Justin Sutherland places. Justin Sutherland is kind of one of our fancier, more well-known chefs. He was on Top Chef, but he's got a great barbecue spot right there. Also, Octo Fish Bar is very interesting. It's in a thing that's called the Market House Collaborative. And inside it is a meat market. There's a brewery. Birch has a brewery there. And this is a great place to go if you want whole fish. They'll have whole fish that's been flown in that day, and
perhaps
they'll prepare it.
People are using Airbnbs and they're cooking their own food, for example.
Yes, or you can eat it at the restaurant. The fish market's right there, but then it's a full service restaurant. So you can go to the market, pick your fish, and they'll cook it in the restaurant for you.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool.
As we get back to Minneapolis, there's a couple things that jump out. In terms of my friend Sarah is working FanFest, and she actually asked a question about gluten-free options that may be in that downtown region.
Yeah, I would tell you that every restaurant knows how to do gluten-free things. It is such a phenomenon that every restaurant will have something for you. So just ask. Don't be embarrassed to ask about what the ingredients are in your food. Every restaurant now is able to offer gluten-free options. And we don't really have like a whole host of like gluten-free only restaurants. There is a restaurant that's in Calhoun Square in Minneapolis off of Hennepin Avenue in the Uptown area that's called Fig and Farrow. And it is all gluten friendly. It is all very vegan forward. It is an entire plant-based restaurant. And that's a great spot to check out if plant-based or vegan options are something that you're interested in. Every restaurant can have something for you now. We're pretty evolved in that way. Also, Hell's Kitchen is right down there too. And they have a really dynamic menu. That's a great spot for breakfast, but it's also a great spot for anything. You can get breakfast 24/7. And they have a lot of unique items. Like one of the things on their menu that I love so much, it sounds weird, but it's porridge. It's made with wild rice. It also has nuts and berries and cream. And it sounds really weird, but it's like the most hearty bowl of like oatmeal that you've ever had. And it is just fantastic. Monoman porridge is the name of it.
Good to know. Now, you brought up breakfast too, because with, hotels, people are staying downtown or they'll get their continental breakfast, or some people in our crowd will be hung over and nursing it and be like, am I going to make the session by 11? Well, there's also a bevy of breakfast spots when you wake up. And if you miss the continental breakfast or you miss the breakfast that cuts off at 9:30, there are places downtown. I'm going to just throw my favorite out there is Keys.
Yeah.
And
Keys
there's
Cafe.
several Keys cafes, no matter where you're at in the area, but Keys Cafe, that one of the downtown spots, I mean, it's going to be busy, and we're probably advertising it to 40,000 people right now. So, restaurant owners downtown, be prepared, because it's going to be a zoo for 3 straight days, but they've gone through the Super Bowl. They're ready for it. But with Keys, but what are some other spots? If you're going to wake up and you're like, you know what? I don't necessarily want a hotel breakfast today.
I like Red Rabbit they have brunch, and they make their own sausages that are just delicious. They are so good. And they have, like breakfast, eggs, and they've got Bernays. I also like the Lowry, which is up on Hennepin Avenue. And they do, again, Bernays and the chilaquile and kind of the more fancier, not fancy, but just more than just your steak and eggs, I guess. For breakfast, also, I mentioned Hell's Kitchen, which is amazing. I'm trying to think, any of the hotels too, they'll have like a certain kind of breakfast, but if you want to like do donuts, Angel Cafe and Bakery they make handmade donuts there every day. So that's a great spot if you want to check that out. And any of the coffee shops in town, the Spy House Coffee does a really great job, and they have all fresh pastries that are brought in every day. We have a lot of great bakeries.
We've gone through the gamut of various types of foods and stuff. I know one of the places I was really looking forward to pitching to people that came out of town, and one of my former coworkers also was a big fan of it, Eric the Reds, but it's closing. So
it is closing.
They will be opening up another restaurant later this year in another location, but it was like Nordic Barbecue. I had heard about it on the other show. They had a great beer selection. It was one of these things. I was really looking forward to that, and no, so we missed out on that one. But what are some places that, okay, you've got, we're taking this to, okay, I need to get a burger and a bite, or, is there something maybe that's chain-esque, that's focal to the Midwest, that maybe somebody from out in New York that's coming in may not have, that's like, oh, well, this is worth trying out here in Minneapolis?
Boy, I'm trying to, it's not a chain, but there is a local restaurant group, and there's 6 of them that they're all a little bit different. I think PS Steak is really fantastic, and that's on Hennepin Avenue up by the Walker. That is a beautiful, beautiful steakhouse, and it is not, it's not something you're going to get everywhere. Mm-hmm. They just do a delicious job with service. They have these potatoes that it's equal amounts cream and butter in the potato to the ratio of the potato. They're called aligot. And they are the creamiest, richest, most delicious things you've ever put in your mouth. They're so fantastic. If you are like salad bound, there is a salad chain here that's called Crisp and Green that's locally owned. And you go in and they've got a bunch of salads that are prepared for you that are all less than 500 calories, or you can make your own. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of fun. It's just a little bit different, more exclusive Twin Cities based chain. I also like Texas Roadhouse a lot.
Yeah, I've eaten there countless times.
They're one of the few restaurants that they cut their own meat, they make their own dressings, they bake their own breads. They have a brand new location in Woodbury. They also have one up in Coon Rapids. And I just think if you're chain restaurant style, that you can't go wrong there.
When we look at just maybe the food misconceptions, because when I moved here, what are you going to have? A bunch of lutefisk?
Hot dish?
Oh, hey,
some hot dish?
I love me some hot dish. I've become quite the connoisseur in even developing hot dish, because my wife from Princeton, there's hot dish and then there's good hot dish, and good hot dish is like egg noodles, some ground beef, a can of veg-all, and some ketchup. I think that's good hot dish. Whereas your traditional hot dish with your cream of mushroom soup, your ground beef, your tater tots, and boom, that's that's the two main hot dishes that we get. The good hot dish, air quotes, is basically when we're like, what do we got in the cabinet? I don't really want to go out and get anything to eat.
Yeah.
So,
well, we talked about wild rice soup, but there's a whole thing called Potluck that's up in Roseville. And this is a fairly brand new spot. And what it is it's 8 local restaurants that are local chefs that all have their own interpretations on what the Minnesota food is. So there's Nordic waffles are up there, and they've got like
had those at the state fair, 2 years ago?
Great. Yeah. And they have a bacon mac and cheese waffle. Smack Shack is up there. So they're going to give you the lobster roll. Burger Dive is up there, and they're going to give you just an incredible, just juicy, delicious down home burger. And if you're lucky, they will have some pull tabs for you too. Justin Sutherland again. Yeah.
Most places got pull tabs.
Yeah. A lot of places have pull tabs. Justin Sutherland again has the Obashan noodles. So he's got a ramen bowl, but also a Japanese fried chicken. That's great. Betty and Earl's is a biscuit place that's unique to the Twin Cities, and they make the best biscuits you've ever had. And I'm including the South people.
Their
sausage and gravy biscuits.
You're telling me and that's in Roseville.
Yep.
You're telling me
Potluck.
I live in New Brighton. You're telling me I've been, so you said
it just opened.
Okay.
It's only been open for, I think it's been about 8 months.
Okay. So I'm about to have heart palpitations here, because granted,
You're missing out.
It's not the food you should probably be eating on the regular, but growing up B's and G's, that's,
their biscuits. They've got a biscuit breakfast sandwich that's fantastic. They've got an apple biscuit. So they do sweet, they do savory, they do the sausage and gravy. It's really, really amazing. And Smack Shack too in the North Loop. I mean, the lobster rolls, you're from the East Coast, like their lobster roll, I would literally put up against any lobster roll I ever had in Baltimore. It's full of lobster. It's delicious. And here's a little tip. There's a place, and it's a real dive bar, but it's in Northeast Minneapolis, and it's called the 1029. And you can get that lobster roll that they serve at Smack Shack inside that 1029 bar. They have some sort of arrangement where they serve them in there, and they also have pull tabs, and they have a wheel you can spin, and it's a very fun neighborhood, just divey bar where you can get a delicious lobster roll.
From a food perspective, again, we're going to talk about the beer taproom scene again with the Beer Cast guys. But from a food perspective, the beer hall concept is something that's really kind of exploded again, and we've got plenty of them here. If you want to go in and get some brats and a beverage, I mean, there's a couple new Bohemias left. One of them is downtown St. Paul near the Excel Center, which is the other direction of downtown Minneapolis. But if you're going to sit down, it's like, all right, I need a brat and some beers or something like that. That in the area, where's your best bets there?
Couple places. You would go, I think you should go to Keg and Case, which is on West 7th. And this is the old Schmidt Brewery, and it's been turned into a food hall. So inside it are lots of different places. If you want to have brunch, you can go to In Bloom, and you can get what they call a Dutch baby pancake. You can also go to Knack, which is inside there, and that's a meat market, and they've got fresh hot dogs and fresh brats that they do right there. Revival is in there, which is a barbecue spot. So you can get a pulled pork sandwich. You can get some mac and cheese. They've also got a brewery in there. They've got a coffee shop in there. So lots of different concepts. They have Ashley Old Sweet Science ice cream. It's probably one of the best ice creams you've ever had. So I would say Keg and Case, but also if you wanted to go and you wanted to get a great brat or a great hot dog, I'm trying to think. I just totally lost my train of thought because I had another place that was in Minneapolis for you and I can't remember. So just give me a sec. Ask me the next question and it'll come to me.
Well, you've got the Surly sticker on your computer.
Sorry. That is what I was going to say.
Surly Beer Hall.
So the Surly Beer Hall has a couple of different things for you. One is the food there is really excellent, and it's kind of gastropubby. So you're going to get they have a burger.
Meaning
they
you're not getting
sausage.
gas. Gastropub is a term, people.
It means that you're going to have a little bit elevated experience. So they're not just going to serve you their brat with mustard, though that's delicious too. Mm-hmm. You'll get some homemade pickles. You'll get a little homemade chip on the side. They also at Surly have a second level that has a fantastic pizza shop. Mm-hmm. And their pizza, I just love. It's very oven fired. It's got black little char spots on it. They've got lots of delicious toppings, and Surly is surprisingly a great place for pizza.
Yeah, and again, talking about the local beer scene, Surly has kind of led the charge in terms of putting Minnesota on the map with their craft beer. I know at that beer hall, I went one time, and that was where you can also get in these tap rooms, you can get variants of normal varieties that you'll find in the stores, but you won't be able to, you can get them at the tap room. Like they had their Fiery Hell, which is the hella
which
style,
has jalapeno
with chilies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this? So I had that. I'm like, ooh, that's
one of my favorite beers.
That is too good to enjoy more than one of, because you know what's going to happen later. But I mean, it's again, that's one thing about the tap rooms too, is with sometimes you get the food experiences. Invictus just opened up, not that long ago, I believe up in Blaine, and went there, and they're a tap room that, in a brewery that's not a food truck's not attached, but they have like a food barn. You have to order separately because the laws in this state are weird about serving food. So, have
you been to the lab yet in St. Paul?
I have. I went there probably a week after it opened. And for those looking at a map, it's right, or 280 and 94 come together. That part of town, you got to go off University to get there. But I went there, and what I loved about the lab was I didn't know the brands I was drinking. I knew the styles I was drinking. And it was one of those things I was like, man, if I wasn't married with 2 young kids under the age of 8, I'd be here all the time.
Yeah, it's a really cool spot. They're basically incubating lots of different brands there, and they don't label them. So if you want an IPA, you don't know who made it. And part of the Minnesota scene is we have so many fabulous craft breweries and craft distilleries that you tend to kind of order the ones you know, right? So it's fun to go there and not really know what it is, who made the beer for you, but just whether you like it or not.
And they all are listed on Untapped if you're an Untapped dork like I am.
Yep.
So it's one thing. I went there and I was like, and it's like you can have as much or as little as you want. They give you these little cards. I guess this is sorry, Beercast. We're talking about the lab here because I heard it on that show, and then I went and experienced it. Like, you get the little card, you can pour as much or as little as you like. You can sample, create your own flights, and it's like one of those places. It's like, man, why hasn't this exploded around the country?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And we have another place that does wine and beer like that in the North Loop. Also, we have a lot of great pizza spots. Mm-hmm. I want to just mention Black Sheep Pizza because it's both in downtown Minneapolis and in downtown St. Paul. And they have fantastic pizza.
Isn't there one in Black Sheep? Is there also one in Duluth?
I don't know. You're thinking maybe Pizza Luce.
I know there's a Pizza Luce up there.
Yeah, and Pizza Luce is locally owned too. They have one in St. Paul.
Fantastic,
they have one in downtown Minneapolis. Also a great Caesar salad. There's one of my favorite
Wife
Caesar
likes
salads.
the Caesar salad there. Yeah, and they're in Roseville as well.
And they have good wings.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good spot there. Like I said, that's one thing I loved about living here is we've crossed we haven't really scratched the surface of the styles, but the options. And to know that, okay, I'm going to be driving around Pizza Luce in Rosedale. I'm going to pick one up, or Rosedale Center, Roseville, Minnesota. And I know that, okay, well, there's a coffee shop down the street with really good German chocolate cake.
Yep.
And fruit tarts that I love so much. So you really.
Do you love fruit tarts?
The tart, like, know, I love the custard and the I love those.
Have you been to, it's a brand new place. It's in Frogtown, and the name of the chef is Mark Hugh, Heu, and it's Patisserie Hugh. He is like a legitimate French chef, and he is making some amazing tarts. Also Patisserie 46, which has a location both in Minneapolis and on Selby in St. Paul. Crazy good. Crazy good.
I mean, we could probably you've spent 13 years talking about food in this area. I mean, it
goes on and on.
I'm just trying to get 13, a good 13 more minutes. No, but, when we go to see, wrestling fans are, okay, what can we get out? What can we get quick? Now, we were saying that there's not a whole lot, but there are plenty of like corner cafes and corner restaurants, whether they be, something as simple as a Subway or like the 8th Street Grill, for example, which is, got a pretty good beer list and, your average pub fare. There are hundreds of options, but from an experienced person that knows that 40,000 people are going to be coming out of this concourse at the same time, what is your strategy for, say, if you're one of those people coming out and like, okay, everybody else is trying to eat right now too. What is your strategy for getting something good that may not be overrun with all these people?
I would light rail it. So I would get on the light rail and I would go down to Fifth Street and I would get off on that last stop, and you're going to dump right out where there's a Loon, where there's a Brothers, there's a 112 eatery. They're all kind of right there in that same spot.
Glicks is
there with the delicious bratwurst.
That is probably my favorite place in downtown Minneapolis, other than Hopcat, because granted that's not a Minnesota specific thing, but they've, you got 80 some beers on tap. You're going to like that.
Also too, like you can hop off the light rail and you can walk like 2 blocks and you're at First Avenue and A Street, where you can go into First Avenue's restaurant there and eat at the Depot. If you feel like you're somebody that wants to experience what that First Avenue experience is like, you want to see the wall, you want to take your picture with the Prince Star, which of course you should. First Avenue is our famous nightclub that is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year.
Amazing place. I've only been to one show there. I was supposed to go see Soul Asylum there about 2 years ago, and we got snowed out, so we ended up going to Pizza Luce instead. But I saw Atmosphere there, who was a local hip hop artist and group. He's
incredible, and he just released a new record.
What's a record?
I have a record player, so I talk about records.
Phonographs, yeah. So again, First Avenue, it's one of those things that speaks to the music culture here. How much do these cultures, the beer culture, the food culture, the music culture, the sports culture, how much do they all mesh together?
I think they mesh together a lot. If you think about music, art, chefing, it's a creative endeavor, making craft spirits, making craft cocktails. All of these things can kind of come together in a way that furthers the art. If you look at a place like Northeast Minneapolis, for instance, you've got Indeed Brewing. You've also got Popol Vuh, which
you've checked off so many of these things that I just love about the cities. This is great.
Because Northeast, like right in that little area there, you've got Indeed Brewing. You've got Popol Vuh, which is a higher end Mexican restaurant, which is fantastic. You've got Central, which is a quick taco spot that you can grab. You've got Able Seed Brewing. You've got Minnesota Nice, which is the ice cream spot. You've got Anamale's barbecue truck. You also have Uncle Frankie's, which is a great place for a hot dog or a brat, which is the place I was thinking of before. See, I knew I'd circle back to it. All of that goodness is like right on one street that's like 2 blocks long. Also, if you're in Northeast, like head to Surdyk's. Surdyk's is our first liquor store that opened after Prohibition in the state of Minnesota. They've got great grab and go sandwiches. You could pick something up and take it to the stadium with you. There is also a great pizza shop that's right across the street. There's just every neighborhood you go into is full of discoveries.
There's also Kramarchik's.
Yes. Oh, let's talk about Kramarchik's.
First of all, what is it for those who don't know?
It is a very old school sausage and bake shop and a meat market. And it's been there in Northeast for, I think Surdyk's has been there since Prohibition, since the 30s, and Kramarchik's came shortly after that. They also have like a hotline, so you can get goulash and you can get Hungarian.
Very Czech, Eastern European.
Yeah, food. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, I took my mom there, and her mother was born in Ukraine and spent time in Germany. They came over after World War II. So when my mom came into town, I go, here's something that maybe you might remember from being a kid, because it was weird. When I would grow up, Christmas was like Russian food, borscht, and crab cakes. And my mom, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother would argue in 3 different languages. It would be like German, Russian, Ukrainian dialects, and English. But crab cakes. It was just so strange. So that was one of those places that, again, if you're staying around there and you've got access to it, awesome. You've got kind of got a gold mine there. So that's one of those places, like if you're into that Eastern European fare, if you want to sample what some of the people from this area are, their heritages too. I mean, we've also got the Nordic side of things. Where would you recommend for there?
Yeah, well, Bachelor Farmer is sort of our restaurant of the North, as it were. They're doing, the Swedish meatball and the smorgasbord. But I would say too, like the Sample Room in Northeast has a charcuterie board that is incredible. So I think of that as being the North. Also, I like like food building a lot. And this is a building where there's 5 vendors in it that are all working together. So there's Mike Phillips, who has Red Table Meats. He's making charcuterie boards. There's Bakersfield Flour and Bread. So they're milling their own bread there and baking it and using it to serve in the restaurant. There's Kieran's Kitchen, which he's the owner of the building. And he's an Irish guy that generated a lot of interest because he made Two Gingers whiskey out of Minneapolis that was then sold. So he's got a restaurant there that's serving all of these different makers. Alamar Cheese. We're also known for our cheese here. So food building kind of gives you all of that experience of the local artisan Minnesota makers, but in a restaurant setting.
This is just, if you are any type of food person and you're coming into this not knowing what to expect, I think you're going to have your socks blown off.
Here's my total tip for you too. You know, there's your local tourism websites and guides and all those things. But whenever I go into a city, and this is what I would encourage you to do in this city, is I would encourage you to ask your bartender, your person in your hotel that's cleaning your room. I would ask you to ask the real people, like, where would they go for this? Because you're going to get a very different answer than you might get by just looking at some of the tourism guides. Because I think, you know, people live in these communities and they eat there every day and they have their favorites, and you'll discover something that's different that maybe you wouldn't if you just stuck to some of the more well-traveled parts of town near these arenas.
So another thing about Minnesota being unique is we've been touching on seafood, but walleye. This is a tremendous lake fish. Of course, the Green Mill's got it on their menu. A lot of places have walleye fingers or things like that, or I think it's what Cabilo or whatever the heck the lodge is up northern Minnesota, some farm raised stuff. But when you get fish here, and it's not just for Lent, when you get walleye, what is it about the walleye that is kind of a Minnesota staple when it comes to fish?
I think it's just a different, cleaner taste. It's super flaky. It's thinner, so it's a fillet in most situations. It just has I don't know. It has a like lake feel to me. And also, like, right now you're during Lent, so fish fry is a big thing.
Although the fishing season is technically just ended and it needs to reopen.
Yeah, exactly. But like, so Urban Growler in St. Paul is a brewery that's owned by 2 women, but they also have a restaurant there and they do fish fry and they're doing lake perch. So that would be something to check out. Also, the Tavern on Grand is known for their walleye sandwiches, walleye fillets, blackened walleye. They have walleye all over their menu. Each restaurant does fish fry a little bit different, but Ob's, which is a sports bar up in St. Paul, they have a $14.95 all-you-can-eat fish fry. And then Bennett's, which is in St. Paul, and they are fun. It's a local supper club, and they do a great job with crab cakes. They have all-you-can-eat crab legs on a Friday night for $49.95, which, if that's your jam, like, you can just load up. It's delicious.
Yeah, just might be walking a little rough the next week because let's get the beer and seafood and
yum.
Let's get gout, everybody.
Yum. I love gout.
Oh, it's not fun. Just sold myself out there. Now, when we look at, you know, you'd mentioned the sports pubs and stuff, and I want to go back to Glick's for a minute because that is a very unique place. It's the German beer hall.
Beer steins,
giant half-liter and liter beer steins, and the beer selection is not robust. Bottles, yes, but when you get what's on draft, it's basically going to be a couple different types of German beer, and that's it. And just that type of food experience. I'm a sucker for a soft pretzel, a giant soft pretzel.
Oh yeah, like those. You know who has really good soft pretzels too is Red Cow in North Loop, surprisingly. Have you ever been to Gasthof sehr Gemütlichkeit in Stillwater?
Yet, no. I haven't. I've only made it to Stillwater once since I've been here, believe it.
Oh gosh, if anyone's staying in Stillwater, there is a giant food scene there. There's a speakeasy that's right across from the Laura Hotel that you have to knock on the door to get in. There's also Nacho Mama's, has delicious nachos there. The nacho to chip topping ratio is fantastic.
There's a burger spot down there that we ate at that was super good on the corner. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like this little old 50s diner type of thing.
Yes, it's really great. I want to say it's called Andy's.
Something like that.
Parlor Bar too. There's two of them. One is there's Parlor on West 7th in St. Paul, and they have what people say is one of the best burgers in town. And they also have malts and boozy shakes. And then they have a Parlor Bar in Minneapolis, which the basement is like kind of a cocktail bar. It's a little higher end, but you can get the Parlor burger there too.
Mm-hmm. So as we wrap up this, I mean, I feel like I could go hours on this one because
you could,
but we're people that are coming in. They've got 3.5 days. So when they come in, we've got a party with Sports Engine and Jay Robinson Wrestling Camps at Cowboy Jack's at that big deck. You know, that's a huge one for Twins games.
Yeah.
You know, food and beer notwithstanding, there's a party there. But say, okay, late night food when people get out. And they're ready to party it up, but they still want something to eat. Are there some like go-tos? Like, all right, I'm going to be out on the town tonight and I want to be able to get a couple good beers, but also, you know, I'm not going to go for a full sit down. I need something that I can, you know, pub fare kind of thing. What are some places that's like, you're out of the town, you know, you're going to be out until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it may be. And you know that there's going to have to be food along the way. What would you suggest?
Well, there's a couple, cause that's down in the warehouse district, mm-hmm. right? So Tracks, which is the new bar and restaurant that's located right next to the Fillmore. So the Fillmore is a music venue that's owned by Live Nation. And this is a good spot if you just want to grab something. Also Pizza Luce, we've mentioned, mm-hmm. but they've got a late night window. So you can grab a slice and continue on your way. As you're walking through downtown, there are also food trucks. There could be some hot dog vendors out on the street. That's one of my favorite things to do is to grab a hot dog when I come out of First Avenue and eat it as I'm walking to my car. Also, don't forget Candyland, which is
not just a game for kids.
No, it's on 8th Street and it is candy and popcorn. And they have one in downtown St. Paul too. And they have the best Chicago mix. So cheddar popcorn, caramel corn, almonds, all mixed in. It's just fantastic. Candyland.
Candyland. So, I think, what is it? It's Shoots and Ladders too.
Yeah.
Just all these kids games that my daughters play. So, finally wrapping up.
Oh, and food trucks.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Food trucks, they move around.
Yeah, they do.
Food trucks to keep an eye on. If you see it, go.
Okay, there's so many.
Right.
I just think if you see a food truck, go. In St. Paul, El Burrito Mercado has a great food truck, and they serve a fantastic tamale.
Mm-hmm. Tamale.
Yeah, really delicious tamales. And they have a full service restaurant too, both in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. If mole is something you're into, or you want some really delicious margaritas, El Burrito's where it's at.
Well, it's also going to be right around the heels of St. Patty's Day. So what's our Irish or I'm fake Irish for a day kind of thing?
Oh, probably Shamrock's Pub in downtown St. Paul. It's on West 7th. We started out the podcast talking about their Juicy Lucy, but they have a great Reuben also. Reubens are kind of in every restaurant. I don't know why that's about as extent of the Irish as we get.
We're Irish-ish.
Irish food is kind of, cause like the Lex will do like a great corned beef, and the Lex is an old school, supper club, and you should check that place out too. They have a beautiful bar. It's a heritage place in the Twin Cities. They have jazz in there. It's really cool. It's a great place to have a burger. Oh, they have these chicken sliders there. That's like a little fried chicken morsel on this delicious potato bun with this yummy slaw. And you can have that at the bar.
Potato rolls are just, yeah.
I know. Aren't you? More people should do potato rolls.
Something about just a ham biscuit with like a little bit of mayonnaise, or I'm not quite on the ham salad train yet. But
ham salad.
Yeah. See, there's your Minnesota come out.
Ham salad.
You dropped your umlauts over there.
I did.
Anything that you feel like we didn't touch on that you feel out of town guests really should have a chance to experience? Because I've lived here 10 years and and looking at the shows that you've done, there's a couple things that you've done on your podcast. And I'm like, I want to do that too, because I want to look at it as a way of discovering Minnesota from a transplant standpoint. That's another conversation we'll have later. But if you're coming in, we've hit a lot of cool things. There's not going to be enough time to see everything that we talked about today. But if you're coming into an area, and you actually did a show about being a tourist in your own town, which I thought was really helpful for this and knowing what's around you. If there was one piece of advice that you can offer, other than if you see a food truck, stop it.
And talk to your neighborhood bartenders and the people that work in your hotels.
All right, let me stop the question then. What is your perfect Minnesota meal then? If you're going downtown Minneapolis and you've got, say, $20 in your wallet.
Oh, downtown Minneapolis, $20 in my wallet. Honestly, I think I would end up at the Monte Carlo or J.D. Hoyt's. Both local owned establishments. The Monte Carlo is just so classy inside it, but it's got my favorite dry rubbed wings that we talked about. J.D. Hoyt's has this thing that's called a buddy bowl. That's like cheese and rice, and there's meat and beans. And it's just fantastic. They've also got a lot of blackened fish options there, and it just feels really cozy. I really love PS Steak too. That's in our historic building, the old 510 Groveland, and they're
that's the Blue Plate restaurants, right?
And it's not.
No?
It's not. It's owned by Jester Concepts.
Or did Groveland? Is it? I'm thinking Groveland Tap.
You're thinking Groveland Tap, which is in St. Paul, and Blue Plate. We should talk about because they have Free House, which is in the North Loop. We mentioned the Lowry. That is a local restaurant tour group. They have great breakfasts at the Lowry, also at the Highland Grill in St. Paul.
I've eaten at the Highland Grill,
and then they have rail.
There's one in Maple Grove too. Was it three squares? 3 squares. That's it.
Yep. Mercy. I can't think of the one that's downtown. That's right off of the light rail. I want to say it's Mercy. Anyway.
But that's a restaurant group that's also kind of synonymous with the Twin Cities. They do a lot of advertising promotion on the radio as well. So, they do. I've been to Groveland. I've been to the Highland Grill, and we've picked up gift cards for 3 squares. We haven't actually been in there to eat yet, but my wife picks up gift cards for her employees at work. So
super good chicken sandwich too. Like I love a really crispy fried chicken sandwich, and Revival has a great chicken sandwich. They have a location in South Minneapolis, also in the Keg and Case Market, and then up on Selby and St. Paul.
Awesome. So again, so much to discover. So if people are in the area but have not been exposed to your foodiness, where can they follow you on social media and where can they listen to the show?
Yeah, the radio show, you can find Weekly Dish wherever you find your podcasts. You can find my website, stephaniesdish.com, where I have comprehensive lists of what are the best wings in town, what are the best fish fries in town, what are places to go for date night or places that have fireplaces. I do all kinds of listicles there that you can find.
And soon we're going to have to add places for wrestling fans to come.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And welcome to all of you that are coming here. Twin Cities is a fantastic place. If you're going to do anything, make sure you go to one craft cocktail room. Make sure you go to one brew pub, and you can go to more, but this is the minimum. I would also go to Hmong Market and just check out we have a larger population here of Hmong than any other people. And Hmong are Asian people that didn't necessarily have a land, right? So they were nomadic people. So their food culture is from all over the region.
Primarily Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia.
That's right. So that going to that market here is something that you can't get anywhere else. It's really interesting. They have these amazing stuffed chicken wings that are stuffed with rice noodles. It's imagine an egg roll, but it's stuffed into a chicken wing. If you can even get your mind around it, they're super good. Green papaya salads. It's just a really cool place.
I still can't get over the chicken wing thing. That just sounds heavenly.
It is. It is. And it's someplace that you really couldn't see in any other part of the country.
Stephanie Hansen, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Sportswear. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button? MyTalkOnline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed and you already listened and you love the show and you want to support this show and this network, MyTalkOnline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.